Australian sovereignty is a life and death question, and economy of genocide. As goes Palestine, so goes humanity. Coming up on this week's Citizens Report. Welcome to the Citizens Report for the 17th of July 2025. I'm Elisa Barwick. Joining me today is Citizens Party Research Director Robert Barwick. Welcome, Robbie.
Thanks, Lisa.
And on today's show, we're going to talk about Mr Albanese's trip to China, Penny Wong's trip to Malaysia, and a few other related things, but why it's a historic moment, really, a moment of opportunity for Australia, a do or die moment for this country to make some crucial decisions.
But the way Australia, and especially the Australian media, frame this stuff, you really see that the core of the issue is the battle for our sovereignty.
Yes, that's the key. And then we're going to discuss the report, really explosive, compelling report that's been issued in the last couple of weeks by the UN Human Rights Rapporteur for Palestine, Francesca Albanese, and the importance of that for the world to stand up and take notice of.
So it's a show about two Albaneses.
One's a better one, I can say that for sure. You'll find out which if you stay tuned. You don't need to stay tuned to find that out, but anyway, you will. Now, please, if you like what we're saying and the message we're putting out and you want to help it circulate more widely, hit the like button and make a comment below, circulate the show on social media. Do subscribe and ring the notification bell and you'll be informed of new content as it comes out. And another announcement today, if you have been watching our show for a while now and you like what we're saying and what we represent, please join the Australian Citizens Party as a member.
Let me do it this way, Lisa. The Citizens Party needs you. There's the recruitment poster.
Not because we're going to war, hopefully to stop one.
No, we're on a membership drive. We need to build up our membership in a very big way. It's $30 a year to become an associate member. It does help with our fundraising, but you get a monthly...
Yeah, you get this each month, and if you already get it each month, then you're probably already a member, but you can call us on our toll-free number if you're not sure. And just to mention a couple of urgent deadlines, because we do want to build organisation at the state level with state elections coming up. So in South Australia, we need to have 250 members by the 1st of September. And we do have people assisting with that in our new campaign office in Penrith in New South Wales. So that's going great guns. Sorry, that was South Australia I was just talking about, but New South Wales, where we have that operation going on, we must have 900 members by the 1st of October.
Yep.
So, but wherever you are across the country...
We're well on the way in both places, but this is still quite a challenge. And one of the things that people need to be inspired by this is understand that the membership of the major parties, who we all agree we hate, the Union Party that has rigged the system against us, their membership's actually in terminal decline. So we need a grassroots movement to take over this country, and because though operating a political party for elections, etc., is important, you becoming a member of the party increases our strength, and we'll have a snowballing effect around the country, and watch this space.
The one of the interesting things that's been in the media lately is the decimation since the election with the Liberal Party. That one of the biggest costs that they have in local Liberal Party branches is funeral wreaths, because the declining membership is tipping off the other end. Now we're building, we're recruiting. We've obviously not had the coverage to put us into the major headlines, but wherever we go and we're able to intersect and talk to people, and particularly young people too, that respond brilliantly to the kinds of proposals, whether it be the postal bank or to how to transform housing so young people can buy a home. It's brilliant. And one of the great reactions in that regard is I urge people to watch an interview that Andy Schmulo, our New South Wales declared Senate candidate for 2028, has just done on unemployable media, and it's titled, "Is This the Worst Financial Fraud in Australian History?" Because that's another thing that really gets Australians going. So many people have been victims of financial fraud of all kinds. So,
yeah, we'll put the link below on that. Definitely watch Andy Schmuller's interview. He's on fire. And there's a part at the end of the interview where there's a panel who are interviewing him. And these are business people, small business people, who one of them said, look, I just assumed that, because I'm in business, he said, I'm on the side of all business when it comes to what economic policy should be. And he just assumed that he was on the same side as corporations. And Andy made him understand that, hang on, you have to distinguish between small businesses who represent real people who work their butt off, right, to make a go of it, and these big, rapacious, soulless, multinational and domestic corporations that control the political parties and have rigged the system. And it's not their money that's at stake, right? The CEOs of these things, they're just an entity unto themselves, and they are not on the same side as small business at all.
No.
And the power of Andy's forceful delivery persuaded them of that.
Yeah, so this is a great intervention, get it around. Right, our first topic, Australian sovereignty is a life and death question. Now, just to set the stage, Robbie, we had Prime Minister Albanese in China this week, and it's quite a lengthy trip, six days. And just in the last leg of it, and the people might have seen it in the news this morning, he went to the Great Wall of China and announced he was, following the footsteps or walking in the footsteps of Gough Whitlam, a great Australian Prime Minister. Last week, Albanese was echoing the words of John Curtin.
Yep.
And basically, look, we're only asking him to be as good as John Howard, as we said on last week's show. Whitlam and Curtin, that would be wonderful. But even if he could just be as good, not even as John Howard, Alexander Downer, he could even arguably be considered worse than Howard himself, with things that he's been involved in since, all kinds, manner of operations run right out of the City of London and so forth. But in 2004, when Downer was asked, and he was in China at the time, would Australia back up America in a potential war against Taiwan? And
against China over Taiwan.
That's right. He outright refused. So he had the guts to say that because he was in the middle of negotiating trade agreements and various other things with what today, of course, is our greatest trading partner. So Albanese, while he was over there, the question had been raised in the major press. It was put out by the Americans and specifically by Elbridge Colby, who's conducting the review of AUKUS, that Australia and Japan need to declare their support for the United States again in the matter of a war over Taiwan. And so far, Albanese hasn't bought into that, which is a good sign. But give us your assessment of what the picture's looking like.
Well, this was really pernicious by Elbridge Colby. So he's the Under Secretary of Defence in the Pentagon. And now, I would be very happy if Elbridge Colby, because of the review of AUKUS, just pulls the pin on AUKUS, says we're not going to do that. But while the review is underway, the message has already come from the Americans that we might ask you for more money. I mean, more money? We're already agreed to $368 billion, and they're going to have the cheek to ask, the gall to ask for more money. I mean, that's as Trumpian as it gets, right? I mean, you know what the way Donald Trump thinks. He's one of these guys who conducts business based on what the market will bear, and then, and in a sense, good on him, because if the Australian government, controlled by the two major parties, it's currently the Labor Party, but the alternative, if they're so desperate to suck up to the United States, right, and Trump thinks, well, I could get $400 billion, I could get $450 billion, I could get $500 billion, I could get $1 trillion, right? Because they're such utter cowards, because they refuse to stand up on their own 2 feet. Why wouldn't you? But anyway, so maybe that's what the Americans are going to do, but if they actually pull the pin on AUKUS, well and good for us. But what Colbridge has actually done, concretely, because we don't know how the review will go yet, is he put this challenge out to, it was reported in the Financial Times just before Albanese arrived. He put this challenge out to Australia and Japan. Commit to us now how you're going to support us in a war over Taiwan. Now, the first thing to understand, Elisa, is that the insanity of that challenge is because when Colby is demanding we do something that even America doesn't do. America has a doctrine when it comes to Taiwan called strategic ambiguity. Ambiguity meaning ambiguous. America has never explicitly committed that it will go to war over Taiwan, right? Yet it's asking Japan and us to do it. Well, I'll tell you which country made it clear straight away they weren't interested, and that's the Japanese. The Japanese, I forget the way their statement went, but they just made it clear that they will do what's in accordance with. The way they said it is they will do what's in accordance with Japan's constitution. Well, Japan's constitution is a pacifist constitution, right? So they were sending quite a clear message. Albanese has chosen to play dead in a sense, right? And he hasn't engaged on this. Penny Wong has made the point that, hang on, this is not. The Americans haven't, even made it clear what they're going to do. And another spokesman, Pat Conroy, said that any decision over war will be made by the government of the day, never in advance as a hypothetical. So they've tried to play a straight bat, right? Bang, we're not engaging on that, and good on them. But you were right. What's wrong with them doing what Alexander Downer did in 2004? But if you actually look at what Downer did in 2004, if Albanese did do that, the right-wing media here, not just the right-wing, even the Nine paper, would be accusing him of being a traitor almost. And I'll play a little clip here, just remind me of this later. I want to play a little bit of Sky News from the other night, where Chris Kenny opened up Sky News by heaping scorn on Albanese's visit to China, basically saying that, I think he calls Albanese the golden boy. I'm just trying to remember this, but we'll find the clip and put it in. You'll see what I mean.
In the past few hours, our Prime Minister has been given the right royal treatment by the communist dictatorship of China. Anthony Albanese has been treated like the handsome boy who has come to heel as he met with President Xi Jinping in Beijing.
Now, the reason I want to highlight this is because Chris Kenny is trying to make out that Albanese has somehow bent the knee to Xi Jinping just by being there.
Yeah.
That's just visiting. Think about this. An Australian Prime Minister just visiting our biggest trading partner gets twisted by these utter arseholes, despicable warmongering bastards in our media as, oh, he's bent the knee. But the reason I'm so furious about it, that same Chris Kenny was the media advisor for Alexander Downer in 2004 when he did what we just talked about.
Serious.
Downer was in Beijing. Downer, on behalf of Howard, signing deals to do with gas and whatever. He gets challenged at the time about what are you going to do if there's a war, because George W. Bush had been saber-rattling. The president of Taiwan at the time was a guy who was making noises about we might declare independence. And of course, the Chinese have made it clear they're not going to go to war over Taiwan unless Taiwan tries to secede. That's what it is, secede from China. And then, like Abraham Lincoln prosecuting the Civil War to stop the southern states in America seceding, right? China will do the same thing over Taiwan. Downer said, point blank, he said America should not assume Australia would support it in a war over Taiwan. Because, and he elaborated why, because the ANZUS Treaty between Australia and the United States only commits us to consulting each other when either of us are attacked. We have no obligation to America when it comes to a third party.
Yep.
Right? He just said that bluntly. Now, it's quite extraordinary how much politics has changed. Because if Albanese said something that strong, that bastard, Chris Kenny, would lead the charge of calling him a traitor. One of the reasons I know that is because it wasn't uncontroversial in the day when Downer did it. And people like Greg Sheridan, who's another despicable warmonger in the Australian media, he led the attacks on Downer in 2004, right? Oh, how dare you not completely be slavishly subservient to the United States on all matters. But if even Alexander Downer, and there's been no bigger US sycophant as Foreign Minister of Australia than Alexander Downer, and if you don't believe me, go back and look at the way he didn't just justify the Iraq War, he cheerled the Iraq War, that guy. I mean, he was despicable. The Labor politicians at the time, they were in opposition. They hated him more than anybody else. But he's just such an arrogant bastard. But he was prepared to at least say on that matter at that time, no, Australia's national interest is to have nothing to do with it. That tells you how much politics has changed, right? And what we're trying to do as a party is say, look, we don't have to think that the world is all Pollyanna and we sit down and sing Kumbaya with China. Let's just put our relationship back on track where even pro-US governments were prepared to assert their independence when it mattered.
Yeah, no, it shows just not how much who we have bent the knee to, but how much their knee is, on our neck.
Well, and just to take up the life and death part of this, Elisa, think about what Colby is actually asking us to commit to. So if there's a war over Taiwan, America is going to wage that war from Australia. That's why there's all these American military. That's what America's been doing. It's been building up its military bases here, so we can wage a war from here, and it'll use the Philippines and other countries as well as it can. Right? It's going to demand the Japs so it'll just take over South Korea because South Korea's constitution, America's military runs South Korea's military, right? But they're all much closer to China, right? So the main force projection will be from here. And that means China will be retaliating here. Now, America will be planning and is planning that this war will be a proxy war. So it will not want to engage China directly. Just like America doesn't engage Russia directly, it's used Ukraine, right? It's provided the arms to Ukraine so the Ukrainians can do it. They're going to try and do the same thing. And the main reason for that is both sides will want to avoid attacking each other directly because then if that becomes a direct war between the two of them, that can escalate to nuclear weapons, right? So that's what they're going to try and do. And therefore, they'll just take all these American, our defence minister keeps emphasising that Australia's military is now interchangeable with the United States. So they'll take, one of the things that means they could do is take all these American military personnel here, put Australian flags on their shoulder and say you're now an Australian force. Right? So Americans with American accents will be functionally Australian for the purpose of this war. And so when China retaliates, those missiles are going to be coming here. Blow the ever-living crap out of us. Right? This will be the annihilation of our country so that utter nut jobs who have a worldview where they say, a doctrine they first expressed in 1992, that there can be only one superpower in the world and America will not tolerate the rise of a rival, whether an economic or a military rival. That's the doctrine America, it's called the Wolfowitz Doctrine, that's the doctrine America has adhered to since 1992. The smarter people in America know they can't back that up anymore. America is a basket case anyway. China has just left it for dead. Give us a break, right? China has well and truly left America for dead. Donald Trump, he can say it till he's blue in the face that he's made America the greatest country in the world again. I mean, I heard him saying that again this morning. Like this is his argument with the Epstein thing, right? Don't look here, nothing to see here with Epstein. Why are these people even talking about Epstein? Look what we've done. This is the most success any president's ever had in history. What I've done, really? It's just utter chaos over there, right? So that's a joke. America is finished under these lunatics. China's left it for dead, but what they still do have is the biggest military in the world, the biggest military power in the world. And those idiots will say, well, we want to use that. We want to use that power. And the question for Australians is, are we going to allow ourselves to be sacrificed for that?
Look, if you want a preview of what Australia the mess we'd be in if we pursue this course, look at Ukraine and, sit for a moment and ask yourself, do we want to be, sitting here in 6 months or a year's time or however long when we're already in that boat and trying to get out of it? You don't get into it in the first place. Now, the other intervention we wanted to mention occurred ahead of Mr Albanese's visit, and that was the trip of Penny Wong, where she went over to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, to speak at the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting.
Just before you go through the details of this, this part always drives me nuts. So here's a positive 6-day visit by Albanese to China, our biggest trading partner. Ask the West Australians if we need Australia's trade with China. Give me a break. You know, if they ever just say we're not trading with Australia anymore, turn the lights out.
Yeah.
So it should be a positive thing. So it's like Australian government cannot just be positive about anything. So Penny Wong is deployed to give this horrible speech, which is it just infuriated me because it's so hypocritical as well.
Yeah, so she really earned the nickname that we've given her of late, Pentagon Penny, when she gave this speech at the Institute of Strategic and International Studies, setting the stage ahead of Albanese's visit. And I just wanted to contrast, and you can read more about it in the Australian Alert Service, you've written this up, but I wanted to contrast some of her statements about the United States and our great, wonderful Anglo-American allies with statements that she made implicating quite opposite tendencies that China is supposedly doing. So she said in regard to the US, she said, our alliances with the United States and with New Zealand and our close partnerships with Canada, the United Kingdom and Europe all make Australia stronger and safer, as opposed to you lot over here. And then she went on to say that the United States' presence in our region remains critical to the Indo-Pacific's strategic stability and reinforces the ability of all its countries to make choices in their own sovereign interests. This is like the battered wife saying, I wouldn't be alive without you,
Well, and can I just take issue with the first part as well? Like, she's at in an ASEAN country, Malaysia, at an ASEAN event, sideline to an ASEAN event.
Which is working closely with BRICS and unrolling a complete shift in world relations.
So this is our part of the world. These are our neighbours. And who does she cite as the source as the countries that make us feel safer? The white countries on the other side of the world. She says only the white countries on the other side of the world make us, a white country, feel safer in our region where you, brown people, are our neighbours. I mean, this is... And she's brown, she's Penny Wong.
Don't they wonder what everyone in the audience is thinking of them? It's crazy.
Oh, I know what they're all these countries look at us with bemusement. They're looking this terrified little bunny country down in the bottom that nobody is wasting time thinking about how they're going to invade. Nobody, right? But we construct these scenarios in our head just so that we can justify giving up all our sovereignty to first the Brits and now the United States.
And the only thing that makes them halfway interested in us is what America's doing down here.
Yeah,
what are they up to? So she went on to say that regarding China, she said, China continues to assert its strategic influence and project its military power further into our region. And we have seen the worrying pace of China's nuclear and conventional military build-up without the transparency that the region expects. None of us, including the United States, seeks military confrontation with China.
And that means if there is one, it's China. Blame China for it.
They're seeking it, yeah.
So America's military is over China's side of the Pacific, up in China's face, and we're there with them. So one of the things that, most of the meetings that Albanese have had have been positive, and he also met with Xi Jinping. It was all positive. But he did raise, apparently, the Chinese warships that came down and did that live fire exercise, and he raised that with Xi Jinping, and so Xi Jinping straight away raised the Australian warships that are up in the South China Sea doing things like sailing through the Taiwan Strait right up against China, much closer than any of those ships came to us, and that was Xi Jinping's immediate response. So Penny Wong is saying, that's not provocative, that's our shit don't stink. Oh, sorry, I swear, but I mean, these are some of the best sayings, those. You got to, if there's a conflict, it'll be China's fault. Even though China's not over on the eastern side of the Pacific, up in America's face, but it's going to be China's fault because America's here, because just for purely benevolent reasons to make us Aussies feel safer, apparently.
Yeah. And in that vein, she said, we don't want rule by power alone with no reference at all to law, forcing outcomes by economic coercion or military muscle, rather than on the level playing field that we are building together.
And seriously, we have a situation now, with the current United States government under Trump, he doesn't care about international law.
No.
And he doesn't care about domestic law,
Coercion or-
right? He's just my will be done.
Muscle.
And even though, and it would be a mistake to think that's purely Trump, because on the international stage, right, he's just the most open about it. That's the way America's been responding for ages. We're going to talk in the next segment about someone who's trying to actually uphold international law in relation to an actual genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
And the people who are crushing her are the Americans, right? Because they don't respect international law. And Penny Wong never condemns the Americans for its lack of respect for international law, right? It's all insinuating it's China's fault.
And just finally, she defended AUKUS as a transparent arrangement compared to China's military build-up.
And I had to take exception to that because, so China is bad because its military build-up has not been transparent, even though, well, why do we know about it then, right? But ours was transparent. Hang on. AUKUS was conducted entirely in secret. It was foisted even on Anthony Albanese by Scott Morrison. And then the countries that have led the criticism of AUKUS are our ASEAN neighbours, especially Indonesia. And Indonesia's criticism is that AUKUS will be the beginning of an arms race in this region towards nuclear weapons because of the nuclear component. And we've said to Indonesia, no, these are nuclear-powered submarines, not nuclear-armed submarines. And Indonesia says, yeah, but you just want us to take your word on that. Well, hang on, we're Australia. We never lie. Of course you can take our word on it. And no, that's not how the international system works. Are we going to let Indonesian inspectors come and inspect our subs? No way. So yes, we expect them to take our word on that. And they're not going to take our word. So they have to assume that these American and then British subs, if we ever get them, that are nuclear powered may also have nuclear weapons as well. And then that makes them think, well, what might we have to do in relation to that? That's what we started by doing this evil deal that our government doesn't even want to have an inquiry into.
Now, if you want to hear more on this whole broader topic, you can go and watch an interview that Robbie did with Martin North on Tuesday night. That was a live show, but you can see it on his Walk the World YouTube channel, which was titled, Whose Poodle Are We Anyway? But two other things just finally on this subject. You also were asked to submit an article to Global Times in terms of when, while Mr Albanese was in China, for our reflections on that.
So I've written for the Global Times, and essentially what I wrote, I'm hoping they publish it while they're still there. So the entourage with Elbow, which is scanned in the English press in China, will see, Robbie Barwick, Citizens Party.
Yeah, no, that'd be good.
But my main point is, here we had an independent relationship with China. All governments from 1972 with Whitlam, followed by Fraser, Hawke, Keating, Howard, Rudd. I'm a bit iffy on Gillard, but anyway, we'll put Gillard in there. Gillard and then Abbott. Until 2017, all Australian governments regarded the relationship with China as an independent matter for Australia. And it's only since 2017 that we've subordinated that relationship to this total subservience to the United States. So what I wrote is all we should be asking Albanese to do is put it back on track where it was in 2017, right? What's unreasonable about that?
Yeah, and also very interestingly, we had two embassies seeking our analysis as well of the situation this week, and you were able to meet with representatives from the Chinese and Iranian embassies.
Yes, so we met Dr. Wang Yongchun from the Chinese embassy, and when I say we, I was with John Lander, the former Deputy Ambassador to China.
Put up the photos.
You'll see John and I with Dr. Wang there, and that was a very interesting discussion. He's a historian actually, and he was fascinated. He wanted to meet John and pick John's brains about the history of the Australia-China relationship. And why was he motivated to do that? Because they're always thinking about how can we improve the relationship, right? Because it's still, it has been improving from a very low ebb, right? And they want to, as far as the Chinese are concerned, they're willing to keep improving it. But they know they're up against this subservience that Australia has with the United States. And then the next meeting we had was, so we went and met America's best friends, first the Chinese and then the Iranians. That's John and I meeting with the ambassador, Dr. Ahmed Sadeghi. And that was a fascinating, and in the middle of that meeting, he also went out of, was at pains to say, look, he said, from our standpoint, there is no issue, from the Iranian standpoint, that is an obstacle to better relations with Australia. Australia does have an independent trading relationship with Iran, with grain and mainly with grain, and the Iranians are happy to have a good relationship with Australia. It's just, again, that relationship gets subordinated to the geopolitics of our subservience to the Americans, and through that, our apologism for Israel, right? And so that, and he said that despite the fact that not only did Australia not condemn the illegal Israeli and American strikes on Iran, unprovoked, immoral strikes on Iran, they condoned it. But the Iranians are still happy to do business. He emphasised that the Iranians think that it's so important to abide by international law. And if you know the history, don't believe a word about the tone of what comes out of the media. Iran enters in the negotiations. It did this thing called the JCPOA. It didn't break it. The Americans broke it. Trump broke it. Iran has had more officials that have been assassinated by the Israelis and the Americans than any other country in the world. And by any measure, it would be Iran would be in the right to go around assassinating them in return. 2 weeks ago, Bibi Netanyahu, the lunatic, the deranged criminal lunatic, he's such a shameless, lying, warmongering bastard. But he knows that the way to manipulate Trump is through sheer flattery and lies. He, even before he nominated Trump for the Nobel Prize, Netanyahu was on American TV saying it was Iran behind the two assassination attempts on Iraq, on Trump. And the Fox News guy said, "What evidence do you have?" He didn't provide any evidence. It's Iran. And the Iranians told me that no, their response to these assassinations against them, including their star general Soleimani a couple of years ago, they are pursuing it through the International Criminal Court, providing the evidence. They want proper justice in accordance with international law. This is not a country that is despicably, irredeemably evil. That you can do business with them, and they deserve to have their side of the story told. So it was very good to have a meeting with them and learn that.
Yes. Now, speaking of international law, we're going to move to our next topic. Economy of genocide. As goes Palestine, so goes humanity. And as I mentioned earlier, we're talking here about the report that was handed down on the 30th of June by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Occupied Palestinian Territories, Francesca Albanese. And look, she is, I really have to take my hat off to her having read this report. She's conducting a absolutely powerful, incisive, it's like a Nuremberg style proceeding before the fact. Well, not before the fact because the genocide's already going on, but Nuremberg happened after World War II ended. She's doing it amid this war. And it is very, very, it hits exactly the right note in terms of the demands of what governments must do, including to rein in the corporations that are supporting Israel's war against Palestine.
And just to be clear, Elisa, where Francesca Albanese is coming from, and you've got to listen to her talk to see how sharp she is on this. Everything she does is based on international law.
Yes.
So she defines the conflict in terms of international law, and once you define those conflicts accurately in terms of international law, then there are consequences that the member states of the United Nations, which is all of us, have in response to that, right? And so all she's highlighting where our countries are in breach of their obligations under the clear international laws, and it's devastatingly effective.
So she's notifying countries of these obligations, but she's also sent letters out to numerous banks, big businesses, corporations, telling them they're in breach of these laws as well. And this is why the United States government has sanctioned her personally. She can't travel to the United States, assets frozen, things like that, and written to the United Nations demanding she be sacked because she's not fit to hold that job. So I want to show two clips here, and she's discussing here some of the aspects of the report she issued, which was headlined From Economy of Occupation to Economy of Genocide. And in this particular press conference at a United Nations human rights session, she's talking here about how Israel's essentially being used as a testing ground. Israel's using Palestine as a testing ground, as a laboratory for the broader global military-industrial complex. And it's a horrifying picture that she maps out here, including explosive potential already used in Palestine, 6 times that of Hiroshima. So we'll roll that clip.
Israel has used the genocide as an opportunity to test new weapons, customized surveillance, lethal drones, radar systems, and other unmanned technology to exterminate a population without restraint. While Elbit Systems wins Israeli Ministry of Defense Award for Innovation, Lockheed Martin and a global web of 1,650 other companies benefit from Israel flying the F-35 fighter jets for the first time in beast mode, carrying 4 times the ordnance, up to 22,000 pounds, than when operating in stealth mode. It is its very defenselessness that has made the people and the land of Palestine an ideal laboratory for the Israeli military-industrial complex. The forever occupation has provided an optimal testing ground for arms manufacturers and big tech with little oversight and zero accountability, while investors, private and public institutions have profited handsomely. I once thought the problem was ignorance, a lack of understanding about Palestine and its history. Later, I saw the ideology at play, the deep political affinity many states and elites hold with the State of Israel. But in the face of genocide, so visible, so ostentatious, so live-streamed, these explanations fall short. In this context, what action could possibly be sufficient to rectify these violations and the corporate connections to them? The answer is simple. There is a prima facie responsibility on every state and corporate entity to completely abstain from or end their relationship with this economy of the occupation, especially as it has transformed into an economy of genocide. In the face of all this, too few have disengaged in the last 21 months. Armed companies have turned near-record profits by equipping Israel with cutting-edge weaponry to unleash 85,000 tons of explosives, 6 times the power of Hiroshima, on Gaza. Tech companies provide dual-use infrastructure that is utilized as a weapon of mass targeting and killing. The machinery of the global construction equipment giants is razing Gaza to the ground, preventing the return and reconstruction of Palestinian life. Global energy conglomerates have fueled these assaults with coal, oil, gas, while the same infrastructure has been deprived to the Palestinians. No water, no electricity, creating the conditions of life calculated to destroy. While major global banks have underwritten and purchased Israeli treasury bonds, bankrolling the devastation at a time of gaping military budget deficits and plummeting credit rating. The 40 entities named in my report, alongside their parent subsidiary licensees and franchisees, are just the tip of the iceberg, illustrative of this system that entangles many, many more. What I exposed is not a list, it is a system, and it is to be addressed. Now, my expectation is that the OHCHR database, the Working Group on Business and Human Rights, and lawyers, investigative journalists, and prosecutors globally will take this framework and secure that what states have failed to achieve, accountability. And we must reverse the tide. As I conclude, let me say, member states must impose a full arms embargo on Israel, suspend all trade agreements and investment relations, and enforce accountability, ensuring that corporate entities face legal consequences for their involvement in serious violations of international law.
Now, I wanted to just highlight some of the other points that she makes in her report, and again, you can read our article which lays this out in the Australian Alert Service. But as I noted, she says Palestine's a testing ground for the global military industrial complex, and it's why I put the headline the way that I did it, because if the world allows this to go ahead in Palestine, it's going to come back and hit all of us. This is testing new technologies, which I'll mention some of, which she says wouldn't be possible without what she called the corporate machinery. And she identifies and names banks, big investors, asset managers, big corporations, big tech. She and her team compiled a database of more than 1,000 entities, which involves, she said, a complex web of corporate structures and the often obscured links between parents and subsidiaries, franchises, joint ventures, licensees, etc. It's all quite obscure, so there's much more beyond what she's even been able to name in black and white. She names the banks, for instance, that underwrite Israel's bond flotations that are allowing them to keep funding this war, including BNP Paribas and Barclays, so French and British banks. She names in particular, among others, BlackRock and Vanguard as among the biggest purchasers of the bonds that Israel is floating to run this war. From 36 countries, you have purchases of bonds. And also these two outfits, these investment managers, BlackRock and Vanguard, are investors in big corporations that are facilitating the war. From on the technology side, IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, Alphabet, which owns Google, and Amazon, doing things like testing tech checkpoints, running new forms of biometric surveillance, so-called smart walls, drone surveillance, artificial intelligence systems for war. The big contributing parties to this are Palantir, which is running facial recognition technology through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is running checkpoints for people to go and collect food so that Hamas can be targeted in those queues. Albanese pointed to this as a death trap, this supposedly humanitarian front targeting people queuing up for food. So that's Palantir, Amazon, Lockheed Martin, of course, even Caterpillar. And she gave an example of the new technologies, such as with their D9 bulldozer, operating, quote, automated, remote commanded core weaponry for the military, unquote, used in killings and mass demolitions and even, horrifyingly, burying alive wounded Palestinians. I mean, can you imagine bulldozers just going in, using artificial intelligence capabilities, automated capabilities, to just sweep aside, get rid of the dead and wounded. And she demands, as you heard in that clip, that governments and journalists and legal authorities block these corporations if they don't have the honour to do it themselves. So more power to her. I think this is extremely courageous, and it's this kind of intervention from individuals that are willing, and she said in another clip that I heard her say, well actually it was a Twitter X post that she put up, where she said people have risked their lives to defend, for instance, the Rome Statute to prevent this kind of genocide happening, and I'm willing to, put myself on the line for that purpose. I'm not, cowed by this whatsoever. That can change history, that kind of passionate defence of international law. As bad as it is these days, because it's crumbling, you have to have people that are willing to fight for it and stand for it and make it better in the process of doing so.
Elisa, at the end, I think 70 million people died in World War II. And at the end of that war, the whole world came together and said, no, we want a system where we can all agree to uphold we can all accept international law and uphold it. And out of that was born the United Nations. Now, there's a lot of rubbish said about the United Nations now, and of course it's not perfect, but you've got to understand the difference between a lot of different UN agencies, and there's there are certain people get influence in those agencies and push a certain agenda and whatever. But the core of the United Nations is the General Assembly, where all the nations of the world have a right to sit, and the Security Council, right, where there's 5 permanent members and then there's a rotating, I think, 10 other members, so 15 members in total. And the 5 permanent members have a veto, but the Brits shouldn't be there anymore. The Indians should probably be there in their place, etc. But nevertheless, that's what's left of still from World War II, and that has been able to be a system where at times it has been able to unite and uphold international law. It defines what international law is, and you can still, anyone here who's a skeptic of the UN, go and read the Charter. Go and read the UN Charter and tell me you disagree with the expression of international law in the Charter, which is actually an expression of national sovereignty. It emphasises the importance of each nation having their sovereignty. The UN is not about nations giving up their sovereignty. It's about, it's like the UN is no different than if we all, 50 people were stranded on a tropical island, and we know we're going to be there for years, and we've got nothing better. We've got to get on with it. We decide to set up a court structure which we'll all agree to abide by, so that disputes can be adjudicated. Right? That's all it is. No different than that. And this is this is on the world stage. Without it, you have an anarchy, where it's might makes right. So that's where it started. That what we have is this system now, and it's been systematically undermined. The country that has been, the Palestine-Israel conflict has been a bone of contention in the UN for decades and decades and decades. And so extremists in Israel are some of the biggest forces behind undermining the whole existence of the United Nations, right? And international law. They don't want to be bound by international law. But we say as a country, as Australia, we say, oh no, we support international law. Well, okay, prove it. And Francesca Albanese here has given a report that's entirely consistent with international law and the obligations we're supposed to have. And there's, 60,000 confirmed, 70,000 confirmed dead, 25,000 kids, right, in Gaza. There's a reason we need to be abiding by these kinds of reports. And I just want to make one last point on this. Go watch the Terminator movies, because there's scenes, not so much the first one, or the second. Anyway, there's scenes in those movies where they depict, if you know the story, that the robots come back from the future to kill the guy who's going to fight them in the future. But go look at those scenes of the dystopian war landscape in the future, where it's these machines just going around hunting people amid all this rubble. I mean, Gaza's starting to look like that now. Yeah. This is high-tech warfare against innocent people. Yep. It looks like that now. It's a horror show. It's something that they put in movies about the future, dystopian future. It's there now for these poor people, right? And you have to be totally heartless not to think that humanity needs to be rallying here and doing something. And Francesca Albanese is putting herself on the line. And so what are the Americans doing? Led by Marco Rubio, showing they have no care about international law at all, going to sanction her because she's the messenger. Yep. Shoot the messenger.
It's a test for humanity, and we've got to stand up to it. So that's the show. Now, don't forget to join as a member. Follow the links below. Donate to help us to continue to push this campaign forward. And anything else we need people to be ringing Parliament about?
Well, I'll be in Parliament next week with Dr. Andy Schmulo, so call your member of Parliament and ask him to meet with us. That would help. It's going to be. We don't have that many meetings set because it's the first sitting week of the new Parliament, and they've got all this ceremonial stuff with the Governor General to open Parliament, whatever. Because we're a British colony at the end of the day, we haven't grown up as a country yet. We're not an independent nation, but anyway. But this is the first visit for us, so we'll go back. We'll go back in the future. And we haven't talked about banks as much today, but one of the reasons that we're there is Andy and I will be saying to those members of Parliament, hey, there's a report here about fixing the behaviour of the banks by setting up an expert panel for a post office bank. What are you doing about it? And so we're going to keep on that until we get this solution.
Yep, so keep hammering away and contact us for more information. That's the show for this week. Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Lisa.
And see you again next week.
Authorised by Robert Barwick, Citizens Party, Melbourne.